Okay. All right. I'm going to do day 2 of the Advent of Code problem. So basically, it says that they go to one of the locations from yesterday and they find out it's a nuclear reactor fission plant, and they find a report, and those reports, these numbers are each a report. And our task is to find out if these reports are safe. So every line is one report. So this line is a report, this line is a report, this line is a report, and so on. And it gives us a set of conditions that tell us whether the report is safe or unsafe. And our task is to count the number of safe reports. And so the conditions are that a report is considered safe if the levels are either all increasing or all decreasing. Any two, so that's one condition. And it says a report is only counts as safe if both of the following are true. So we need both of these to be true. So neither of these can be, it's not an or situation. So the levels are either all increasing or all decreasing. Two adjacent levels differ by at least 1 and at most 3. So two adjacent levels differ by at least 1 and at most 3. So it has to have a difference of 1 or 2 or 3, essentially. And if it's 4, it's too much. If it's 0 or below, it's not enough. So 76421 is safe because all the levels are decreasing by 1 or 2. These are examples are unsafe because 2 is an increase of 5, 6 and 2 is an increase of 4, 1 and 3 is an increase of only 2, but 3 and 2 is decreasing. So since 1 and 3 were increasing, 3 and 2 are decreasing, and that's unsafe. So this is kind of an interesting problem. I don't really immediately have like something that I think we should do, but all we're going to do is break this problem down. That's the number one thing you can do with these problems is just break them down into their sub problems and solve them once at a time. So I think the first problem that I want to solve is how to determine if a iteration is increasing or decreasing, right? Because we're going to be iterating. These are working with lists, obviously, and so we're going to be iterating over each of these and then iterating over their lists to determine if it's an increase or a decrease. Once we are able to determine if it's an increase or decrease, we need to check if that iteration is the same as the previous iteration, right? So if we had an iteration that is an increase or decrease, we need to check if that iteration is the same as the previous iteration, meaning that we must have increased the next time or decreased the next or the previous time. Once we do that, I think that's all I want to do right now. I want to break this down really small, and we're just going to start super small with this array. Like we're not going to even check our sample input yet. So what I'm going to do is just declare a variable called the array, and we're going to put this in an array. So I'm going to do 76421. And so all I want to do is come up with some logic that determines whether these iterates over it and determines whether we're increasing or we're decreasing. Okay. So let's do that. So for the element in array, what I think we should do is use a 2-pointer system. So we're going to have 2 pointers. The first pointer will point to the first position, and the second pointer will point to the position right above that one, right? Or right next to that one. So we'll declare our pointers as I starts at 0, right? So this will be the first position, and J starts at 1, right? So now we have 2 arrows. We have one arrow pointing here and one arrow pointing there. And then we can just, I think how we tell if it's increasing is just some basic logic, right? If this element, if the first element is less than the next element, then we are increasing, right? Let's set a direction. So we'll call this direction. And let's initialize it to none first, because like we don't have a direction. So if the first element is less than the second element, then we know that we are increasing. So we'll call this direction equals, we'll just put in for increasing. If the first number is greater than the next number, oh, this shouldn't be 1, this should be j, because these numbers are going to change each iteration. Then the direction is decreasing. We'll just put decreasing. So yeah, that's all I want to do. That's all I want to solve right now. So, and then so now after this, just to test this, right? I want to print the direction on each iteration. So we're decreasing. So the whole time this array, we're just decreasing. 7, 6, 4, 2, 1 is decreasing. Now let's try with the second array. So we should get increasing as well. The second array is increasing. 1, 2, 7, 8, 9. And because this is a Python, you can just redeclare your variable, right? Or your, yeah, you can redeclare your variable. So this is just redeclaring the first one. So we're increasing. Let's do one where it says it's decreasing. Okay, this one, 1, 3, 2, 4, 5. 1, 3, 2, 4, 5. Okay, so we have some problem in our code. Because, oh, I'm an idiot. I've actually been testing all of these wrong. So after each iteration, we need to increment. We need to move the pointers, right? So j is plus equal, because we're not even iterating. Right? And then so what'll happen is j will become out of the index range because j is always 1 ahead. For element in array, we can just put this is probably not going to be the final code, but we can just put if j is equal to the length of the array, then we break. That way we're not coming across an out of index order. So essentially once j gets here outside of the array, we're just going to break. That way we're not trying to access a value that isn't there. So yeah, okay, so it looks like it's working. So we have an increase, and then we have a decrease, and then we have an increase and an increase, which is exactly what happens here. We have an increase, and then we have a decrease, and then we have an increase, and we have an increase, okay? So now we've solved how to determine if we're increasing or we're decreasing. And now we just need to put this, I think I want to put this in a function. So let's put this in a function called find direction, or find dir, right? And we're just going to take, we're going to, let's just take a number 1 and a number 2, because all I want this function to do is like this logic. I want it to have a direction, and I want it to determine that direction. Right? And so it has the possibility of returning none, which we can handle later. So now let's break these into functions. So we're going to define, and we're going to call this solve. And let's declare our variables within that function. Oh my gosh, I keep pushing the wrong buttons. Okay, there we go. Okay, so solve is going to iterate for E and R, yep, or for E and J, yep. And we're going to pass the array here to this function. for element okay, so we need to change our direction to not use the array numbers. Use num2 because we're just going to pass this function. All I want this function to do is tell me the direction of two numbers, right? We're going to isolate that part of this logic, right? And so instead of here, instead of, well, we do need that for that. We can just say, find direction between the array of I and the array of J. And so that should give us the same, functionality. Let's test that now that we've refactored it. There's one more thing we need to do. We're returning this. So let's just make sure we print this so that we get something in the console. And it says solve is missing its argument, right? So we need to give solve. So let's move this down here. We need to pass solve. So this one is increasing. Okay, so 1, 3, 2, 4, 5. So we're getting, so this logic isn't working. If number for E, okay. Okay, so we took out the increment logic, right? So now we need to, we accidentally deleted the increment logic. There we go. So we're increasing, decreasing, increasing, increasing, okay? Let's test it on the first array, which should be all increasing. I'm sorry, decreasing. Yeah, 7, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so cool. All right, so we've isolated that part of the logic, right? Now the next thing that we need to do is have some base cases. So let's see. The levels are either all increasing or all decreasing. So do we need to store? Okay, so we're gonna rewrite this logic a little bit, I think, because we need some more variables. So essentially we're trying to find out if this report is safe or not. So we're gonna have a value of safe and we're gonna set it equal to true. And we're gonna have a while loop that says while we're safe, because once we find a condition that's not met, we just need to jump out because we know that that's not safe. So while we're safe, let's call the direction. We need to save the direction of the previous value. So the current direction so before we enter the loop, we can find the first direction, right? So what are the first two numbers doing? They're either increasing or they're decreasing. So then we have a direction, okay? We have an initial direction, right? Then we can check then let's just check if the current direction is not equal to that direction, right? So we can say find direction. We can just do this code again. And on the first array, it's kind of, or the first iteration, it's kind of redundant, right? Because it's going to have the same value. So we can say if this is not equal to the direction, return false. And let's come up with a base case to break out of this while loop, or else this while loop will just run forever. What we want to do is we want to traverse the entire array. So we know that we want to end when j gets out of bounds. And when j gets out of bounds is when it reaches the same length of the array. So if j is equal to the length of the array, break out of this while loop. And if we broke out of the while loop, that means we got through the whole array and didn't find a false condition, meaning we can just return true. Okay. So let's test that logic. So essentially what I'm just trying to do is get this to return false or true. I is not defined. Oh yeah, right. What? No, I want to solve array. Okay, and we're running this loop indefinitely because again, we were forgetting this logic right here, or I deleted it. We're forgetting our increment logic. So they're just always stuck at the same value. Okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. All right, so this is saying false. So this, because we know that this one is false. We know that the next one is true. 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 Boom. Okay. So we have a function that is solving the first condition. If the levels are all increasing or decreasing. And it is the case that if there's not an increase or a decrease, meaning if the first two numbers or any set of numbers are the same, then we should return false because it says we have to increase or decrease. So that doesn't solve this, but I think the next piece of logic will, because what we need to do now is we need to calculate the difference. And I'm going to write a new function for that because I just want to isolate all this logic. So we have find difference or find direction. Let's find difference between, and really this does not need to be a function now that I'm thinking about it because this is overcomplicating things a little bit, but we can return the absolute value between num1 minus num2. Like there's not, it doesn't serve us to put this in a function if it's just like 2 lines of code. So find direction, right? If our current direction is different, then we need to return false. But two adjacent levels differ by at least 1 and at most 3. So we can say the difference is equal to find difference of array 1 and array 2. If diff is greater than 3 or diff is less than 1, return false. Okay. So we're getting false for the last one. We're getting false for the first two. Oh yeah, the second one should be false, but the first one should be true. Okay, perfect. Yeah, see, it says safe is the first one. The last one should be safe too here. So let's test that value, which is 13679, 13679. Yeah, it says it's safe. Boom. Oh, cool. I think we're starting to work here. Okay. But what it says is in this example, 2 reports are safe. We need to count the number of safe elements. So actually, I think we change this to determine, we can call this is, ooh, I've been using JavaScript notation. These are actually supposed to be Python notation. Not refactor, rename. 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 Not that it's super important, but I don't know. Okay, cool. So yeah, and now we're calling solve. So this is going to be called is safe, and it's just going to return a Boolean, right? It's going to take in one array and return a Boolean. So now we need some logic for the whole thing, which I think we do that here. So we're going to have process input, and then we're going to call this solve. And we're going to, well, we need to, let's pass that for a second. Let's get rid of all of this. We need to chop this input up. So our input is, well, that's the input from the last problem set. Let's copy this input. Okay, so so what do we need? What do we need? What do we need? We need an array of arrays, because the whole thing is going to be an array, but then each one of these needs to be an array that we need to run is safe on. So let's initialize an array. And for line in file, instead of passing, we're going to append an array. Let's say the line split on the space, because there's a space in between each of these. So we can just create this as an array by using split and split it on the space. And then what I want to do is just see what that looks like. Print array. And then we will call process input. Okay, cool. It looks like it's working. So we have an array of arrays, 7, 6, 4, 2, 1, but this is getting a new line. So I think we just need to replace that new line with nothing before we split it. So this is going to be the string. So let's just replace the new line with nothing. Essentially removing it. Yep. 7, 6, 4, 2, 1. Boom. And yeah, cool. Okay, cool. So instead of printing the array, we want to return the array. Okay. And then in our solve, we can call this array again. We're just isolating the logic. We can call the process input. So now we should have our arrays of arrays. We'll invoke solve here just to make sure everything's working. Yep, we're still getting the same thing. Okay, so now we need to adapt this logic to, so is safe takes a single array. So we need to iterate for report, since they're calling these reports in the array. Let's call this reports, because that's an apt name, right? That's what they're calling. So these are all, this is an array of reports. For report and reports, let's just print is safe and pass the report to it. We should get, okay, so these are strings, and we're doing some math here. So our find diff and find dir are doing arithmetic on strings. So let's just cast this. To integers. Let's do this again here. Okay, and then we need to do the same here. Boom. Okay, Perfect. And look, check that out. We're getting the same. So is safe is true, false, 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 true. So essentially true, false, 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 true. Okay, so we're getting the same reports as them. And what it wants us to do is count the safe reports. So we can say safe reports equals 0. And instead of printing this, we'll say if is safe, this is our condition, so this returns a Boolean, safe reports plus equals 1. And then at the end of this function, we will return safe reports. And we should get a number. Let's print this. 2. And that's exactly what we get here. In this example, there are 2 safe reports. 2 reports are safe. So let's adapt this to our puzzle. Oh my good. Well, I guess that doesn't matter. I was initially surprised that the arrays are all different lengths. But I don't think that matters. So I think we can do copy here. Boom there. So 402. We're getting 402 from our function. Let's see if that's right. Yay, boom, we got the right answer. Heck yeah.